with none other than Chris Kennedy, and he's on our live line. Uh, Chris Kennedy, for those of you, well, I don't know who wouldn't know. Chris Kennedy, husband and father of four children, son of Mrs. Ethel Kennedy, and the late U.S. Senator Attorney General Robert Kennedy, and nephew of late President John F. Kennedy. Chris is chairman of Joseph P. Kennedy Enterprises, founder and chairman of Top Box Foods, America's Heroes Group advisory board member, and former candidate for governor of Illinois. Many of you may remember this. Chris, how are you?
I'm great, and it's good to be on a show where I can call you governor. At least one of us made it. Fantastic to be back on your show.
Oh, thank you so much. That's a great comment. We're going to talk about Top Box Foods, which is a nonprofit hunger relief organization. Updates as it relates to current community outreach conditions. And we just are pleased to have you on, Governor. Tell us.
I'm really glad to be on the show today, because our American heroes, our veterans, are going to become increasingly isolated during this nationwide epidemic. And trying to protect our veterans who protected us is something that we should all do. And you give us a platform, a way to amplify the things that we're trying to do to be helpful so more folks can hear about it. So much of what's happened now is limiting people's social interactions, and it's harder for people to hear about the services that are out there that can be helpful. So I want to thank you, Cliff, for raising this up for everybody in the community, and I'd be happy to talk about Top Box if that's helpful.
Yes, it certainly is, and thank you for your comment, and I am just so pleased to have gotten to know you and the great things, of course, that your family has done through the years, which is just fantastic. So tell us.
This topic is very important to me because I'm of a certain generation where a lot of the people in my family served in the military.
Absolutely.
My Uncle Joe Kennedy died during World War II. So did my Uncle Billy, who was married to my Aunt Kick. He died serving in the English Army, the British Army. My Aunt Kick served in England during the war. My Uncle Sarge Shriver, who went on to found the Peace Corps and be chairman of the Chicago public school system.
That's right.
He was a veteran as well, as was my father, Bobby Kennedy, my uncle, Ted Kennedy, and, of course, my uncle, President Kennedy. And so the role
I don't think too many people have that kind of family.
There are a lot of us, and one of my nephews, Peter McKelvey Jr., just got out of the Army Range. I mean, not Peter McKelvey, Chris McKelvey, just got out of the Army Rangers.
Oh, wow, okay.
And so that military service continues on in the Kennedy family. And that's why this episode in our country's history is so disturbing. You know, we're not prepared fully for the virus that's sweeping our country, and it's leaving people isolated. Just yesterday, we did an emergency delivery for Top Box Foods, so people could buy grocery stores anywhere in the city, and we would deliver them to their house.
Great.
And they get about 50% off of regular food costs. And it was steaks and great-looking chicken and ribs and all sorts of fresh fruits and vegetables. And all they had to do was call or go on the website, and one of our drivers, one of our volunteers would go to the warehouse, pick it up in protective gear, bring it over to somebody's house that ordered it, and deliver it to them. And that's really important because access is a challenge all over the city. But access to food now is becoming more difficult because you don't want to have to run the risk of getting sick in order to feed yourself and your family.
Right.
And for a lot of people, that's the choice they're going to have to make. Somehow we need to fix that.
We are going to be joined right now with Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, who is a combat hero Chris. He's the chairman of the board for America's Heroes Group. So, Dr. Arnold, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Cliff.
Good. Say hello to Chris.
Oh, yes. This is my birthday, and
oh, wow.
Okay. I am so lucky to get these two presents to be talking to yourself.
and Chris. Happy birthday.
Well, happy birthday, Colonel.
Yeah.
I've been on my calls all day with this emergency response for the coronavirus, but I have to say that I was listening to President Kennedy. At least that's what I wish he was right now.
Mm-hmm. I know what you mean. Right.
President Chris Kennedy.
Yeah.
But we are, facing a very entrenched enemy right now that we must make sure that we protect everyone. And I really applaud Chris for stepping forward and doing something about this and making a proactive step with that food depository. That's going to help a lot of people and potentially save a lot of lives as well.
It certainly will, that's for sure. Chris, tell us about the organization.
Well, Top Box Foods was founded in Chicago about 6 years ago. We run it out of offices at the Merchandise Mart, but we have a warehouse on the south side. We source food from all over the country, but a lot of the meats and produce we get locally. And we watch the supply chain to make sure that everything is safe. And we buy largely unbranded product. That is, we're not paying for a grocery store brand or a brand of cereal. If you buy $1 worth of, let's say, cereal, cornflakes, you get about a nickel's worth of product because a lot of the cost you're paying for the branding of the local grocery store or the branding of a manufacturer like Kellogg or Post, and the actual product isn't that much of the total cost. By buying unbranded product and selling that, we can deliver it to people for about half the cost or 40% off what they'd expect to pay in a big grocery store. So we can get them a really good deal, any one of our clients or customers, and keep ourselves in business as well. Recently, because of the coronavirus, we were approached by the city, by Mayor Lightfoot, to try to find a way to develop a model that could serve people who are now supposed to shelter in place. And in a sense, they're trapped in their own homes. And veterans are a critical part of that population. Mm-hmm. So we've worked out a way. We tested it yesterday. We're doing another run on Tuesday where people from anywhere in the city can order groceries. They pay about half what they cost in a grocery store, and we deliver them right to their door. We'll ring the doorbell or text them or call them before we get there, and then set the food on the sidewalk or in a place of their choice so that we keep appropriate social distancing from any of the clients. It's worked out really well so far, and this is a great opportunity to spread the word. Thank you.
This is just great. So you're saying that Top Box Foods is nonprofit.
It's not.
It's nonprofit. That's what gives you the opportunity to do what you do.
And I spent 25 years at the Merchandise Mart, and that's where manufacturers from all over the world have their showrooms.
Sure.
And I got used to that. I didn't like paying retail after I was there long enough. And I don't think everybody should have to pay the high costs of, all that marketing when all they really want is a great piece of chicken, a fresh produce, and a great steak. And we're able to provide that, ground turkey, hamburger, whatever you'd like, and do that at a cost that everybody can afford, we hope.
If anybody would like to call in, you know the number, 312-374-8130. Of course, we have Chris Kennedy with us. We're so pleased to have him back with us. And, of course, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, who, of course, is the chairman of the board for America's Heroes Group. And today is his birthday. So,
well, happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Doctor, I know that among vets, the coronavirus, there's not a lot of evidence about how it's spreading, but really it's only because the VA has done about 1,500 tests. and there's 9 million veterans. And I'm wondering, are you concerned about what's happening in the specialty care facilities or the spinal cord units or long-term care facilities?
Oh, sure. That's always a constant watching point because this virus can be spread usually through droplets. So it's mostly, I'll give you a little bit of background on it. But the virus itself is called SARS-CoV-2, which means severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2. And the disease it causes is actually the thing that we're all walking around saying COVID-19. This means coronavirus disease discovered in 2019. So it's actually the disease process. So this virus spreads through droplets. So that's why we have to really, if someone is sick, they should be wearing a mask. Other people who are in the general public really don't need to wear one. And this virus, as far as we know, can be spread easily. That's why it's moving so quickly through populations in China, in France, and in Italy. And now we're confronted with this virus now spreading within our own communities. So every population is really at risk, but especially those ones that you indicated, Chris, the ones that are in intensive care units, that are in our prison systems, the ones who are in nursing homes. These are usually confined groups that are more prone to actually having the virus spread from person to person because of the proximity of people to each other. That's really why this move was made by the governor to put and the mayor to make sure that we have social distancing in place, which is really a standard public health practice. So imagine that in those units that they are actually following guidelines. They're really trying to make sure they contain the infection. Now, the slow response on the federal level really has been the major stumbling block and problem without having a distribution of PPE. As a matter of fact, last year they had finished an exercise called Crimson Contagion, and it was a field exercise 19 that actually was talking about the pandemic influenza. And it's very eerily, mirroring what we're seeing right now. Mm-hmm. So by disbanding the infectious disease component in the White House and also not properly funding the CDC, it sort of put us behind the curve in this response effort. But we still have a lot of valiant healthcare providers who are out there that are stepping up to the plate, nurses, doctors, paramedics, and people who are actually trying to contain this virus. So I think, over time we will be able to defeat it. But the question is how much ground have we lost and how much more are we going to have to push to make sure we stay ahead of the curve.
Our guest, Chris Kennedy, of course, and you just heard from Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, who is the chairman of the Board of America's Heroes Group. Our number is 312-374-8130. And let's take a caller. Janice, thank you. You're on America's Heroes Group.
How you doing, Cliff? And I see you enjoying your retirement. You'll never stop working. That's what you do.
There you go. There you go.
Oh, Mr. Kennedy, that's an excellent idea what you're doing. But I was wondering, are you working with some of our black farmers here in Illinois? Because we have a lot of black farmers that could use the help to help keep their farms in moments and out in out in that area. And they are natural because my mother's families have a farm down south. I think we still got it. And they never used pesticides. They knew how to farm without pesticides. And you haven't eaten a peach, you're eating a peach come out of Georgia. I'm gonna tell you that one.
Is that right?
That's my question.
Yeah.
Say this. When I was at the chairman of the board of the University of Illinois, we had a great relationship with the community of African-American farmers down around Moment and other places in the state. And that's a little bit of a forgotten group of family farmers, but the University of Illinois had a great relationship with them. It's really difficult for local farmers to bring their product into the Chicago supply chain because the big restaurants, the big hotels, the big food service companies, they want to deal with big, and big. big wants to deal with big, and it cuts out the little guy every time. Yeah. And that's created a little bit of a disaster for locally farmed food, whether that's produce like peaches or hog, cattle, chicken, anything like that is more and more difficult to get at a local level because the big players are so dominant. So we're creating a system that will allow us to aggregate local farmers so that they can supply as a group us, but the larger food service providers as well. And we hope that in the next year or two, with help from the Chicago Community Trust and the family called the Searle family, that's been very generous to the local, what they call the ecosystem around food service, to try to help same people you're in right now. And that's certainly our goal. And I'd love to meet your grandmother if she's still with us.
That's great. That's great. Let's take another caller. Sandra. Hi, Sandra. You're on WVON, America's Heroes Group. Hi.
Yes, hello. I'm just calling to, of course, say thank you to all of you that's on the panel this evening, and specifically to Mr. Chris Kennedy. Thank you so much for the top box food information for our seniors, veterans, disabled, and others. Is there a number that you can offer us for assistance to the top box food?
Sure, and it's really easy to call, and we'll take care of everything over the phone. It's a really good group of volunteers. The number is 312-527-7890. Again, 312-527-7890.
Okay, thank you so much.
And that's Top Box, and you can hear more about the program, place an order if you'd like, do it in the future, whatever you'd like.
That's great.
Thank you so much.
Sandra, thanks for calling.
Thanks to all of you.
And you also. That's great. 312-527-7890, correct?
That's right.
Okay. I'll make sure we get it right. It's very important.
Can I just emphasize one of the things that Dr. Arnold mentioned, and that was the issue around masks. And one of the things that's occurring now is that there's a lot of hoarding going on and a lot of fear. And not all of it is really well informed. It's almost sometimes done out of ignorance and rumors. But the truth is, if you're not sick, you really don't need a mask. And it's really important not to buy things that you don't need right now because, well, the first responders really need it, and they can barely find it. I have a niece, for instance, in New York who's an emergency room doctor. This is her first year doing that, and they don't have enough masks for all of the healthcare providers.
Wow.
And it's in part because, people, our friends and family went out and bought all of those things early on, and now they're not available for the people who really need it. Now, the good news is that the Department of Defense, it has a lot of masks, and it has the very equipment that could keep your lungs working if you get pneumonia that's related to the coronavirus. And they're going to start making that more available to the civilian populations. But I hope that when they do that they prioritize the 9 million veterans in the country today to make sure that the places that are meant to take care of the people who took care of us get the equipment that they need.
That's an interesting comment. Yeah, I had no idea that they had an overflow of masks.
Well, they have equipment staged all over the world, and they're going to bring it back and start distributing it. But it's not only the masks and the gloves, but also the heavy medical equipment that's important for life saving when somebody needs to go on a respirator, for instance.
Sure.
And there aren't. I think there are less than 350 respirators that are not being used right now, and by tomorrow night, the next night, all of those will be being used, and we need more. And the Department of Defense has them, and we need to make sure that as they bring them to the country, that we take care of the vets as well.
This whole idea of top box foods is just a great thing. It's a great thing. It really is.
Well, we appreciate it. Sandra was, familiar with it a little bit, but Janice's point about helping everybody in the supply chain, making sure that we treat farmers fairly and we treat the customers with respect. And our belief is that if we treat everybody the way we want to be treated, the world will be a better place.
Well, I certainly agree with that. Yeah, Dr. Arnold?
Yeah, one thing that Chris touched on is a critical issue. It's about these masks. And the one thing is that the mask should be used, when you see the surgical masks that people are wearing in the streets, they really should just be worn by people who are already have COVID or actually have been infected with the virus. What the mask does is it stops this dispersal of droplets from that person to other people. But the person who wears a mask that does not have an infection with the virus, they actually increase their risk of getting the virus because people start touching this, inanimate objects and surfaces, high-touch surfaces like doorknobs, those kinds of things. And what they have a tendency to do is to readjust the mask, rub their eyes, touch their nose and mouth when they're putting the mask on. And the surface of the mask, if it's contaminated outside, they'll touch that, and without washing their hands, they'll touch their face again. So it actually increases your risk for getting infected. And the second thing is that the mask also is that if you're wearing it just for protection outside, you have to do a little bit more work of breathing. So you actually start pulling particles to the mask that adhere to it. And so the N95 mask means that it stops 95% of particles 0.3 microns or greater in size from getting through. And the problem with the N95 mask is that if you have a chronic disease, the mask, first of all, has to be properly fitted. If you have a beard, if you have extensive dental work, those things, facial scarring, it may not fit properly. It has to be fit tested. And if that mask is utilized by someone who has respiratory problems, they have to increase work of breathing. They have to actually draw the air through that mask. So if they have asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, congestive heart failure, it can actually put a strain on the body and make it worse for them. So be very careful about using those masks. The N95 masks really have a place in the medical care arena, or specifically if someone is recommending that for you from a healthcare provider. But other than that, I would be very careful about using these masks and make sure the supplies are there for the healthcare providers and the veterans who are actually assisting with healthcare as well, as Chris mentioned.
Excellent.
Well, Doctor, let me ask you this, and I know that it may be a challenging question for you, maybe make you uncomfortable. I wish we were all together when I asked it so that I could be there with you and Cliff, but do you think that Cliff would be safer if he shaved his mustache? That's what I want to know.
I already have, Doc. Doc, listen, Chris. Dr. Arnold knows I don't have a mustache anymore. Oh, that's great. Thank you for your concern, though. Okay. Oh, you're great. Chris Kennedy, thank you so much for joining us. Okay.
Great to be with you.
Great to be with you, and just keep up that Top Box Foods. You're a fantastic person, as all the folks are in your family. And, of course, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Happy birthday to you. And that was just wonderful, both of you gentlemen. Thank you.